Consequentialism is a normative ethical theory that judges the rightness or wrongness of actions based on their outcomes or consequences. Unlike deontological ethics, which focuses on rules or duties, and virtue ethics, which emphasizes character and moral development, consequentialism holds that the moral value of an action is determined solely by the results it produces. If an action leads to good consequences, it is considered morally right. If it leads to bad consequences, it is considered morally wrong. The most well-known form of consequentialism is utilitarianism, which asserts that actions should be evaluated based on their ability to maximize overall happiness or well-being. However, there are other variations of consequentialism that prioritize different types of outcomes, such as promoting justice or reducing suffering. At the heart of consequentialism is the principle that the morality of an action hinges on its effects. This makes consequentialism a flexible and pragmatic approach to ethics, as it allows for the consideration of the specific context and the potential outcomes of actions. For example, in a situation where telling the truth would cause harm, consequentialism might justify lying if doing so would lead to better overall consequences. This contrasts with deontological ethics, which would likely insist that telling the truth is a moral duty, regardless of the consequences. In this way, consequentialism allows for a more nuanced and context-sensitive approach to moral decision-making. The most widely discussed form of consequentialism is utilitarianism, as articulated by philosophers such as Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. Bentham, an 18th-century philosopher, developed the idea that the right action is the one that produces the greatest happiness for the greatest number. This is known as the principle of utility. Bentham's utilitarianism is often described as hedonistic, meaning that it focuses on maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain. He argued that all human actions are motivated by the desire to seek pleasure and avoid pain, and therefore, the best course of action is the one that increases overall pleasure in the world. John Stuart Mill, one of Bentham's intellectual successors, refined this theory by distinguishing between different types of pleasure. Mill argued that not all pleasures are equal, some are of higher quality than others. For example, the intellectual pleasure of reading a great book or engaging in meaningful conversation, according to Mill, is qualitatively superior to the physical pleasure of eating a delicious meal. Mill's version of utilitarianism, therefore, takes into account not only the quantity of pleasure but also the quality, asserting that it is better to be a human being dissatisfied than a pig satisfied. This refinement of utilitarianism helped address some of the criticisms of Bentham's approach, particularly the concern that utilitarianism reduces morality. One of the key strengths of consequentialism, particularly utilitarianism, is its emphasis on impartially considering the interests of all individuals affected by an action. In this sense, consequentialism encourages a broad and inclusive perspective, where the well-being of others is just as important as one's own. This aspect of consequentialism aligns well with many modern ethical concerns, such as global justice, environmental sustainability, and animal welfare. For example, in addressing issues like climate change, a consequentialist approach would consider the harm that environmental degradation causes not only to current human populations but also to future generations and non-human species. This focus on the broader consequences of actions makes consequentialism particularly well-suited for addressing large-scale ethical issues that transcend individual or immediate concerns. Moreover, consequentialism's focus on outcomes enables it to be a highly adaptable and practical ethical framework. Since the moral value of an action is tied to its consequences, consequentialism allows for flexibility in moral decision-making. This flexibility is particularly valuable in situations where rigid adherence to rules or principles might lead to undesirable outcomes. For example, consider the classic moral dilemma of the trolley problem, where a person must choose between allowing a runaway trolley to kill 5 people or diverting the trolley, knowing that doing so will kill 1 person. A consequentialist would likely argue that diverting the trolley is the morally correct choice because it minimizes the overall harm, even though it involves actively causing the death of 1 person. This kind of reasoning illustrates how consequentialism can provide clear guidance in difficult moral situations by focusing on the outcomes rather than the means. However, consequentialism is not without its challenges and criticisms. One of the most common criticisms is that it can sometimes justify morally questionable actions if they lead to good outcomes. For example, consequentialism might condone lying, cheating, or even harming others if doing so would result in a greater overall benefit. This raises concerns about whether consequentialism can adequately protect individual rights and moral duties. Critics argue that by focusing solely on consequences, consequentialism overlooks the intrinsic value of certain moral principles, such as honesty, fairness, or respect for human dignity. For instance, while lying to protect someone might produce good consequences in a particular situation, critics argue that habitual dishonesty erodes trust and undermines social cohesion, which are essential for a just and functioning society. Another criticism of consequentialism is the difficulty of accurately predicting the consequences of our actions. Since consequentialism requires us to evaluate actions based on their outcomes. In response to these criticisms, some consequentialists have developed more nuanced versions of the theory. Rule consequentialism, for example, suggests that instead of evaluating individual actions based on their immediate consequences, we should follow rules that generally lead to the best outcomes. According to rule consequentialism, we should adopt rules like do not lie or do not steal because, in most cases, following these rules will lead to better overall consequences. This approach attempts to address the concern that consequentialism might justify harmful actions by emphasizing the long-term benefits of following certain moral rules. Rule consequentialism thus strikes a balance between the flexibility of classical consequentialism and the need for stable moral principles that protect individual rights and promote social trust. Another variation of consequentialism is negative consequentialism, which prioritizes the reduction of suffering over the promotion of happiness. Proponents of negative consequentialism argue that preventing harm is a more urgent moral imperative than creating happiness, particularly in situations where extreme suffering is at stake. This approach is especially relevant in discussions of global poverty, animal welfare, and environmental ethics, where the focus is often on alleviating suffering rather than maximizing pleasure. For example, negative consequentialists might argue that the moral priority in addressing climate change is to prevent the suffering caused by natural disasters, food shortages, and displacement, rather than to seek the greatest overall benefit for the most people. Despite its criticisms, consequentialism remains a powerful and influential ethical theory, particularly in areas such as public policy, economics, and environmental ethics. Its emphasis on outcomes makes it well-suited for addressing complex moral problems that require balancing the interests of multiple stakeholders. In public policy, for example, consequentialist reasoning is often used to assess the potential benefits and harms of different policies, such as healthcare reform or criminal justice initiatives. Policymakers frequently rely on consequentialist principles when evaluating the potential consequences of their decisions, aiming to maximize overall social welfare while minimizing harm. In the context of environmental ethics, consequentialism has played a crucial role in shaping debates about sustainability and the ethical treatment of non-human species. Consequentialist approaches to environmental ethics often emphasize the need to balance the interests of current human populations with the needs of future generations and the well-being of ecosystems. This perspective has led to the development of policies aimed at reducing carbon emissions, protecting biodiversity, and promoting sustainable development. Consequentialism is a moral theory that evaluates the rightness or wrongness of actions based on their outcomes or consequences. Rooted in the idea that the morality of an action is determined by the good or bad consequences it produces, consequentialism stands in contrast to deontological ethics, which emphasizes the inherent rightness or wrongness of actions based on moral rules or principles. In the realm of Stoic philosophy, which places a strong emphasis on virtue, reason, and moral integrity, the concept of consequentialism raises important questions about the nature of ethics, the role of intentions, and the complexities of moral decision-making. From a Stoic perspective, the focus on consequences in ethical evaluation must be tempered by considerations of virtue, intention, and moral character. While consequentialism may prioritize the outcomes of actions, Stoicism emphasizes the importance of acting in accordance with virtue, reason, and the highest good, regardless of the immediate results. Stoic philosophy teaches individuals to cultivate virtues such as wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance as guiding principles for ethical conduct, emphasizing the intrinsic value of virtuous actions over their outcomes. Moreover, Stoicism encourages individuals to focus on what is within their control, their thoughts, attitudes, and actions, rather than solely on external outcomes that may be beyond their influence. By prioritizing the cultivation of moral virtues and aligning one's actions with reason and virtue, individuals can lead lives of ethical integrity, regardless of the specific consequences that may result. While consequentialism may offer a valuable perspective on the ethical implications of actions, Stoicism reminds individuals of the importance of moral character, intention, and the pursuit of virtue in guiding ethical decision-making. By cultivating virtues that are grounded in reason, wisdom, and moral clarity, individuals can navigate the complexities of moral dilemmas with integrity, resilience, and inner strength. In essence, while consequentialism highlights the significance of outcomes in ethical evaluation, Stoicism provides a nuanced perspective that emphasizes the intrinsic value of virtuous actions, the role of intention in moral decision-making, and the cultivation of moral character as essential components of ethical living. Stay tuned for further reflections on consequentialism and its implications for ethical decision-making through the lens of Stoic philosophy, for it is through the pursuit of virtue and moral clarity that individuals can navigate the complexities of ethics with integrity, resilience, and inner tranquility. In the realm of Stoic philosophy, the exploration of consequentialism invites individuals to reflect on the ethical implications of actions, the role of intentions, and the complexities of moral decision-making. While consequentialism directs attention to the outcomes of actions as the primary determinant of their moral value, Stoicism offers a nuanced perspective that emphasizes the intrinsic worth of virtuous actions, the importance of moral character, and the role of intention in ethical conduct. Stoicism teaches individuals to prioritize the cultivation of virtues such as wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance as guiding principles for ethical living, recognizing that the pursuit of virtue is an end in itself, irrespective of the immediate consequences. By focusing on developing a virtuous character and aligning one's actions with reason and moral principles, individuals can navigate ethical dilemmas with integrity, moral clarity, and inner tranquility. Moreover, Stoicism underscores the significance of intention in ethical decision-making, highlighting the importance of acting in accordance with one's moral values, principles, and virtues, regardless of the outcomes that may ensue. By aligning one's intentions with the pursuit of the highest good and the cultivation of moral excellence, individuals can lead lives of ethical integrity and inner peace, even in the face of uncertainty or adversity. While consequentialism offers a valuable perspective on the ethical evaluation of actions based on their outcomes, Stoicism reminds individuals of the enduring value of virtue, character, and intention in guiding moral conduct. By cultivating virtues that are grounded in reason, wisdom, and moral clarity, individuals can navigate the complexities of ethical decision-making with resilience, integrity, and inner strength. While consequentialism emphasizes the importance of outcomes in ethical evaluation, Stoicism provides a profound framework that centers on the intrinsic value of virtuous actions, the role of intention in moral conduct, and the cultivation of moral character as essential components of ethical living. Stay tuned for further reflections on consequentialism and its implications for ethical decision-making through the lens of Stoic philosophy, for it is through the pursuit of virtue and moral clarity that individuals can navigate the complexities of ethics with integrity, resilience, and inner tranquility. As we delve deeper into the intersection of consequentialism and Stoic philosophy, it becomes evident that while consequentialism focuses on outcomes as a primary measure of ethical evaluation, Stoicism offers a more holistic approach that emphasizes the intrinsic value of virtuous actions, the importance of moral character, and the role of intention in guiding ethical conduct. Stoicism reminds us that the cultivation of virtues such as wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance is a lifelong journey towards moral excellence and inner tranquility, regardless of the immediate consequences of our actions. By aligning our intentions with the pursuit of virtue and acting in accordance with reason and moral principles, we can navigate the complexities of ethical decision-making with integrity, resilience, and moral clarity. Moreover, Stoicism highlights the significance of focusing on what is within our control, the cultivation of virtues, the alignment of our actions with reason, and the development of moral character, rather than fixating solely on external outcomes that may be beyond our influence. By prioritizing the cultivation of moral virtues and embodying the principles of Stoic philosophy in our daily lives, we can lead lives of ethical integrity, resilience, and inner peace, irrespective of the specific consequences that may arise. In essence, the dialogue between consequentialism and Stoicism offers individuals a rich opportunity to reflect on the complexities of ethics, the interplay between outcomes and virtues, and the enduring value of moral character and intention in guiding ethical conduct. By embracing the wisdom of Stoic philosophy and integrating it with a nuanced understanding of consequentialist perspectives, individuals can navigate the moral landscape with clarity, integrity, and inner strength, striving towards a life of virtue, excellence, and eudaimonia. As we continue to explore the intricate interplay between consequentialism and Stoicism, let us embrace the teachings of ancient philosophy, cultivate virtues that lead to moral excellence, and approach ethical decision-making with courage, wisdom, and a steadfast commitment to the pursuit of the highest good. Stay tuned for further reflections on ethics, virtue, and the pursuit of eudaimonia through the lens of Stoicism, for it is through the integration of these profound philosophical perspectives that we can navigate the complexities of life with resilience, integrity, and inner tranquility. Consequentialism is a normative ethical theory that posits the morality of an action is determined solely by its outcomes or consequences. This perspective emphasizes that the rightness or wrongness of an action hinges on the results it produces, rather than the intentions behind it or any intrinsic qualities of the action itself. As a consequentialist framework, it provides a clear and practical approach to ethical decision-making by focusing on the tangible impacts of actions on individuals and society at large. The roots of consequentialism can be traced back to ancient philosophical traditions, but it gained prominence in the modern era, particularly through the works of thinkers like Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. Bentham, often regarded as the founder of utilitarianism, a prominent form of consequentialism, advocated for the greatest happiness principle. He argued that actions should be evaluated based on their ability to produce pleasure and reduce suffering. Mill expanded on Bentham's ideas, introducing the distinction between higher and lower pleasures, suggesting that intellectual and moral pleasures hold greater value than mere physical enjoyment. This emphasis on maximizing overall happiness underscores the central tenet of consequentialism: the moral worth of an action is determined by its effect on overall well-being. One of the key features of consequentialism is its appeal to impartiality. It requires individuals to consider the welfare of all affected parties equally, rather than prioritizing their own interests or those of a select few. This impartial stance promotes a broader view of ethical responsibility, encouraging individuals to evaluate their actions based on their potential impact on the greater good. For example, in public policy decisions, a consequentialist approach would assess policies based on their outcomes for society as a whole, rather than catering to specific interest groups. However, consequentialism is not without its criticisms. One significant challenge is the difficulty of accurately predicting the outcomes of actions. In many situations, the consequences of an action may be uncertain or unknown, making it challenging to determine the morally right course of action. This uncertainty raises questions about the reliability of consequentialist reasoning, as individuals may struggle to weigh potential outcomes effectively. Additionally, the focus on outcomes can lead to morally questionable decisions if those decisions are justified by favorable consequences. For instance, a consequentialist might argue that sacrificing one innocent life could be permissible if it leads to saving multiple others, which raises ethical dilemmas regarding individual rights and the value of human life. Moreover, critics argue that consequentialism can lead to a form of moral calculus that reduces ethical decision-making to a mere calculation of benefits and harms. This utilitarian approach may overlook the importance of intentions, motivations, and the inherent dignity of individuals. For example, a decision made solely based on its potential outcomes might disregard the motivations behind that decision, which can be crucial in evaluating moral character. This concern highlights the potential for consequentialism to diminish the significance of moral integrity and the ethical weight of individual actions. Despite these criticisms, consequentialism remains a widely influential ethical framework, particularly in contemporary discussions of moral philosophy and public policy. Its emphasis on outcomes aligns well with the practical realities of decision-making in various fields, including economics, environmental policy, and healthcare. For instance, in public health, policymakers often rely on consequentialist reasoning to evaluate interventions based on their potential to maximize health benefits for the population. This pragmatic approach underscores the relevance of consequentialism in addressing real-world ethical dilemmas. In addition, consequentialism has evolved to incorporate various forms that seek to address some of its limitations. For example, rule consequentialism suggests that instead of evaluating individual actions based solely on their outcomes, one should consider the consequences of following general rules or principles. This approach aims to mitigate the potential for morally questionable outcomes by establishing guidelines that promote overall well-being while respecting individual rights. By focusing on the broader implications of adhering to certain rules, rule consequentialism seeks to balance the emphasis on outcomes with a consideration of moral principles. Another adaptation of consequentialist thought is the concept of positive and negative consequentialism. Positive consequentialism emphasizes actions that promote good outcomes, while negative consequentialism focuses on minimizing harm. This distinction allows for a more nuanced understanding of moral responsibility, as it acknowledges that ethical decision-making often involves weighing competing interests and outcomes. In conclusion, consequentialism offers a compelling framework for ethical decision-making that prioritizes the outcomes of actions as the primary determinant of their moral worth. Rooted in the works of philosophers like Bentham and Mill, it emphasizes impartiality and the pursuit of overall well-being. While it faces critiques regarding its predictive challenges, potential for morally questionable decisions, and the reduction of ethics to calculation, its relevance in contemporary moral discourse remains significant. The evolution of consequentialist thought, through adaptations like rule consequentialism and the distinction between positive. The application of consequentialism spans various domains, including ethics in business, healthcare, environmental policy, and personal decision-making. Each of these areas illustrates how consequentialist reasoning can guide individuals and institutions in making choices that aim to maximize positive outcomes while minimizing harm. In the realm of business ethics, consequentialism provides a framework for evaluating corporate decisions based on their impact on stakeholders, including employees, customers, shareholders, and the community. Companies increasingly recognize that their actions can have far-reaching consequences, not only for their bottom line but also for their social and environmental footprint. For example, a business might implement sustainable practices that reduce environmental harm, even if these practices entail higher short-term costs. From a consequentialist perspective, this decision can be justified if it leads to long-term benefits for the environment and society, enhancing the company's reputation and ensuring its sustainability. Conversely, businesses that prioritize short-term profits at the expense of ethical considerations may face backlash from consumers and stakeholders. A classic example is the controversy surrounding companies that exploit labor or engage in environmentally damaging practices. Consequentialist reasoning encourages businesses to consider the broader implications of their actions, advocating for decisions that support not just profitability but also social responsibility. This alignment of business practices with ethical considerations can ultimately lead to a more sustainable and equitable marketplace. In healthcare, consequentialism plays a vital role in determining policies and practices that maximize patient outcomes. Medical professionals and policymakers often rely on consequentialist reasoning to evaluate treatment options, public health initiatives, and resource allocation. For instance, during a public health crisis, such as a pandemic, decisions about vaccination distribution or healthcare resource allocation are frequently guided by the desire to maximize overall health benefits. This may involve prioritizing vulnerable populations to reduce overall morbidity and mortality rates. However, the application of consequentialism in healthcare can also raise ethical dilemmas. For example, resource allocation decisions may lead to difficult choices regarding who receives life-saving treatments when resources are limited. In these instances, a strict consequentialist approach could prioritize those with the highest chances of survival, potentially marginalizing individuals with chronic conditions or disabilities. This tension highlights the need for a balanced approach that considers both the outcomes and the ethical implications of such decisions. As the examination of consequentialism continues, it is essential to explore its implications for policymaking, global ethics, and the integration of technology in society. Each of these areas presents unique challenges and opportunities for applying consequentialist reasoning in a way that seeks to maximize positive outcomes while addressing ethical considerations. In the realm of policymaking, consequentialism plays a critical role in evaluating the potential impacts of laws and regulations. Policymakers often rely on data and predictive models to assess the consequences of proposed policies, aiming to promote societal welfare. For instance, when considering legislation on public health, environmental protection, or economic reform, a consequentialist approach would advocate for policies that yield the greatest benefit to the population as a whole. This might involve conducting cost-benefit analyses to weigh the potential positive outcomes against any negative repercussions. However, the reliance on consequentialist reasoning in policymaking can lead to ethical dilemmas, particularly when it comes to marginalized communities. For example, a policy that benefits the majority may inadvertently harm minority groups, raising questions about fairness and justice. In such cases, the challenge lies in ensuring that the voices of all stakeholders are considered in the decision-making process. Policymakers must strive to create inclusive frameworks that account for both the aggregate benefits and the potential harms to specific populations. Moreover, the complexity of contemporary global challenges, such as climate change and pandemics, necessitates a collective approach to consequentialism. International cooperation is often required to address these issues effectively, as their impacts transcend national borders. For instance, climate change policies must consider the long-term consequences for both developed and developing nations, ensuring that actions taken today do not disproportionately disadvantage vulnerable populations in the future. This highlights the importance of global ethical considerations within the consequentialist framework, where the goal is to achieve a balance between national interests and global well-being. The integration of technology into everyday life also presents new dimensions for consequentialist thinking. As advancements in artificial intelligence, AI, biotechnology, and data analytics continue to reshape society, ethical considerations surrounding their deployment become increasingly important. For example, the use of AI in decision-making processes, ranging from hiring practices to law enforcement, raises questions about the potential consequences of algorithmic bias and discrimination. A consequentialist analysis would require evaluating the outcomes of deploying such technologies, considering both the benefits, e.g. efficiency, cost savings, and the potential harms, e.g. perpetuating inequality.